Okay, so we're going to try doing the chat thing here. So if everybody wants to go ahead and try the QA thing again and see if you can type in the bar now that it's live. The QA thing again and see if you can type in the bar now that it's live. There should be a button that says Ask a New Question at the bottom of the QA app. It's green. Bot QA app. It's green. Okay, so I'm able to get it to work. So maybe sign out and try to sign back into the chat and see if that helps. If not, if you want to go post your questions in the chat window, we can try that too. Technical difficulties with Google. Not very surprising, actually. Okay, William can see it. Okay, cool. All right, that's fine. If your questions aren't going to work and you guys have problems posing questions, you can add a question just in the chat bar. I'll answer those as well. So let's see, going through here. Well, basically, what we're doing is the project is a companion for Fate Core. So if you don't have the Fate Core book, you can go get it on the Evil Hat website. It's free. It's free download to go over and to go through it. It's a little different than a traditional role-playing game in the sense that Fate is about chaining different advantages and stuff to gain bonuses and to make rolls and do different things like that, as opposed to like D&D kind of thing where you just walk up and hack at things and do things like that. So so in reading through the Fate book and the number of different people who are in our gaming group, we kind of came up with an idea that we wanted to take the Lovecraft mythos, terminology, and storyline and feel, and make it a game out of using the Fate Core rule set. Now, one of the big things that I always get a question about is how is it different than, say, Call of Cthulhu or Trail of Cthulhu or any of those kind of games. Realistically, at the core, it's a different kind of game because those games are really investigator heavy and that kind of stuff. So we're trying to do something a little bit different. Yep. About that, okay, so the question is, how do you keep the Cthulhu mythos feel with such a pulpy Fate system? I think Fate is about, they call it a super system, and I think that the big thing with making the Lovecraft feel and the style is about making there be real consequences. You know, if a player, my son is getting involved here in the chat. In Fate, if you have a consequence like a broken leg, and it could impact your ability to move around or do different kind of dexterous things. But I think with the thing we're trying to do with the Cthulhu is to take the madness and the insanity and the issues that can evolve out of the books. So forget about the Call of Cthulhu game. We're going back to like the original writings. Most of the people in Lovecraft's story become obsessed or insane or end up in the sanitarium. And we really wanted to bring that in. We don't want characters to feel like that they can just do whatever they want. And I think that's one of the things that makes a role-playing game really great. Like first edition D&D is a good example. You know, you've got a system where there's no miniatures, which Fate already is like that, and then you've got this constant fear of players that they're going to lose their characters, and I think that is really what makes that a great system. You know, you could have a character that you love, and it just dies, and that's kind of the risk you take, and by creating that kind of effect and that kind of constant state of worry with the players, that we create more of a careful role-playing experience than just run in guns blazing. Because a player that encounters something like, let's say, like an elder thing, which is like a huge, stocky, like underwater crazy thing, mentally it's going to be difficult for a normal person to kind of grasp that. So it's really going to be about, if the player comes across something like that, we're setting up a way for there to be these insanity checks or horror checks that are going to make it more of something that characters don't want to be careful about. They don't want to be just charge in, because realistically, people who just charge in, or people who play a game where they're not worried about consequences, they're going to be out real fast. And I think that's really what we're going for as far as the Cthulhu mythos and as far as the gameplay goes. So again, if you have any questions, just go ahead and post them in the chat, since the Q&A app is just not working. All right, so another question that I always get from people is if this is going to be a standalone game. And since the Fate Core rule set is free, we're going to have a very brief overview of the basics of Fate Core. So technically, you could play it as a standalone, but really to get the most out of it, you're going to need to go and get the Fate Core book. So that's what we're calling it, a companion book for that. That seems. So just to touch a little bit more on consequences. So like we have physical consequences that happen. Obviously, you get shot or whatever. But we're also going to have a number of things like just like totally having a mental breakdown, or having psychosis, like for example, if someone starts having hallucinations or hearing voices or that kind of stuff. Because what we want to do is we really want to make it that we don't want. I think that this actually goes back to a blog post that I reread, where they were talking about mental illness being a flavoring on top of your character, making your character, like give it a little bit more playability as far as like, as part of it. And I think one of the things that we really want to go after is that it's not a really a good thing to get a psychosis. It's really going to be something that's going to hinder your gameplay. And because Fate is about compels and spending Fate points, people can try to avoid going mad, but it's going to cost them Fate points. And once they get that negative consequence on their player character, they start to lose a little bit of that control that role playing would bring. Because if you're having a problem with nightmares, that can have a real troubling negative impact on how your characters perform or play within the game. So again, if you have questions, post them in the chat bar over here. It's reversed on my screen. Yes, sanity is a separate list of consequences. So what we've built into the game are these is what we call sanity checks or horror checks. And certain creatures and certain types of scenes and certain types of situations will require players to make a roll a check, and they can shift it with their ability, with their skills, or if they have specific aspects of their character. For example, a person who is an occultist, who's a professional that studies the occult, is going to be have the capability to, let's say, get an advantage when trying to defeat a scene where they've already had experience with it. In addition, if you run across a elder thing, the first time it might be horrifying, but subsequent checks won't happen, and that's something else we talked about. If you've seen one, I don't want to say you've seen them all, but if you pass a sanity check where your character's like, I'm okay, I'm not really insane from this creature or this situation, then chances are you're not going to, the next time you encounter, you're not going to have that. That consequence is not going to be existent, because of that. So I don't know if that answers the question, but. So the other thing too, as we go through this month, I'm going to set up a schedule for morning game times, and what we're going to do is in the book we have what we're calling the scene list, and what the scene list is, they're standalone locations within the city of Arkham. So what we're going to do is we're going to have it'll probably be 3 days a week, Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, early in the morning Pacific times, like 9 a.m. Pacific time, and then like noonish for everybody on the East Coast. And we're going to go through different characters and different scenes and kind of flesh those out and lock those in. And those will be part of the book. The idea being that you could take those, and as a game master, you could just drop those into your game and be able to use it. All right, so Zach asks, how do you plan to increase the feel of impending danger or that your character could die? Well, that's really simple. We're making it so your character can die. If again, this goes back to the horror checks or sanity checks. If fighting things like in Lovecraft's work where they're incomprehensible, these are things that are going to affect characters on multiple levels. And like I said, the things where aspects are going to add or consequences are going to add aspects to your character that are going to take the control of your character away and make your characters behave in a contrary way, I think those are going to really add to the playability. But at the same time, the really big thing is going to be, as a game master, is the game master is going to need to make sure the players understand that as a character evolves or changes, even if it changes in a bad way, that they have to take on that persona. And that's really the role-playing aspect of this game that makes it, I think, Fate really great. Is, if I'm a detective and I'm doing something and all of a sudden I'm having some kind of crazy side effect from something, as a player, part of Fate is to take that and integrate that into their gameplay. So players and GMs need to make sure that that's clear. Like, look, you may get it possessed by something and now you have to deal with it, or there may be some adverse effect that happens, and you're gonna have to deal with that and add that into how you're playing the character. Like I said, but if your character goes like catatonic, you're taken out. I want to say the game should feel like my son is bringing me toys. You should feel like I said, your characters need to be like aware and be careful, because bad things can happen, and they're going to happen a lot. There he is. You're so silly, baby. So, Zach, I hope that answers your question. It's really we're gonna have a whole section that we're writing. John Large, who does the Red Dice Diaries, really nice guy, really cares about the environment and the tips and how to create a scene. So what we're doing is we're actually going to provide a GM tips section that talks specifically about setting the mood, dealing with players, how to create the ambiance that would go with, exploring some kind of crazy abduction, or trying to sort out what kind of mysterious behind the scenes cult or whatever that's going on. Because realistically, in my mind, in creating the setting of Arkham is to gaming, I want to say what Crystal Cove is to Scooby-Doo in the new Scooby-Doo. If you haven't watched the new Scooby-Doo Mysteries Incorporated, go check that out, because it's fantastic. So basically, that actually goes back to the setting, and the setting feeling new. So Arkham in itself is like a nexus within the world, and really that's the main focus is on this specific location. And like any good setting, there are a number of factions and things going on behind the scenes and places to uncover. And really with the book, we want to make it so that we give you a few places to get started and get an idea and a flavor for what we're trying, and then subsequently it will give everybody a starting point to build their own or to go off of or to add on to. And then if we get enough people going into it or expanding it, maybe we'll expand or change or make some kind of download content available where we expand it. Like I said, it all really depends on the everybody's feedback and comments. So any other questions? Post your questions in the chat or in the QA. Anything else? Any other questions? All right. Well, I'll wait for you guys to post your question. Yeah, and you guys can't talk? You guys don't have microphones? Shows everybody's muted at work. Okay. Okay, so the question is, can you give an example from a classic scenario of a creature or villain? Sure. So I'm going to go and pull up the doc here. We have what do we have like a monster manual, a source we call it the Monsters of the Mythos, and basically it's going to give a breakdown of each of the creatures or gods or whatever that's within that specific mythos. So an example of a scenario or a specific type of thing. So Yig is a good example. So Yig is kind of the serpent god. I kind of equate him to Quetzalcoatl, the Aztec god, serpent god, and so his faction and his people. So he's got a bunch of different serpent things that are attested directly to him as a god. There are lizard people, and the lizard people that they have are like my model for them has been the reptilian. There are reptilian aliens, extraterrestrials, and they're like all over the internet. So they're minions of Yig. There's also like serpents and nagas. So there's going to be like lizard men, snakes themselves, and then like a half snake, half human hybrid. That's the naga. And those all equate back to Yig. And then the way that a Yig scene would unfold. So the cult of Yig is really hidden behind a church of the worldly god, and this church is got a church in Arkham, and they actually are known for their rowdy church services where they handle snakes and they deal with snakes to prove their faith. So there's going to be a lot of stuff that goes into this. So there'll be a scene example of a cult gathering, and it would be, I want to say a cult gathering in the sense of like Sunday Mass for those churchgoers, but it would be Sunday Mass where these people are handling snakes and they're like going into trances and freaking out, and how that applies to all these different creatures that are behind the scenes and how it all works together. So, Zach, does that answer your question? Yeah, he just woke up from his nap, so he wants some snacks. So I'm gonna go get him something. Post more questions. All right, let's see. Artificial call because losing sanity made easier than losing sanity is made easier to lose sanity. Okay. How will you model that in Fate? Aside from the free invoke on a consequence, is there any further penalty to the sanity check? So sanity checks actually are going to be dealt with exactly the same way as stress. So while stresses, as you get them, would result in you getting taken out, in the very typical sense of Yeah, just like that. Um, of the your mental stress track that's on your character sheet. So this is actually going to be exactly the same as that. So mental stress and physical stress, um, they can both have effects based on dealing with horror. Um, so for example, specifically like a sanity check. So, like I said, if you come across a monster that you've not been encountered before, and it has a specific kind of a horror check, based on what type of monster. So if the monster is like Cthulhu, uh, realistically, you're not going to encounter Cthulhu and come out in any kind of good shape whatsoever. Where he's a legendary mythos being, he's unkillable, and because he's legendary, you need to make a significant roll with shifts in order to even overcome the initial sanity that is just meeting him. Um, and it's not even going to be an invoke. It's just part of the scene. It's a check. So it's like just like if you would come into any scene, you're trying to overcome something. It's an overcome that has to do with his aura. And other ones have it too. The one mythos creature has a aura of petrification. And again, it would be you would be making a overcome against his capabilities, and you would get certain advantages based on your skill set. So if you were more um, maybe had a better physique, you would get a bonus to that. Or if you're dealing with Cthulhu, you'd have a better willpower, you'd get a bonus to that. But realistically, we didn't want to introduce any new rules because we didn't need to. It's just how you apply the rules, and that's really what we're going to define is how to take the existing rule sheet and how to take the existing set and without changing it and making the game totally different, how to apply these sanity things onto it. So, William, I hope that answers your question. All right, well, all right. So William says that wasn't the question he was asking for. Um, the traditional Call of Cthulhu, losing sanity made it easier to lose sanity. How will you model that in Fate? Aside from the free invoke on consequence, is there any further penalty to sanity check? Okay, so sanity is going to adversely affect you in a couple ways. Not only are you going to be disabled in some way, and that may be distraction. If you're distracted, that can have negative impacts in anything that takes concentration, whether aiming a gun or researching things or any number of things. Subsequently, there are also the situations where sanity makes you lose control for some reason. If you um, go catatonic, you've got a character now that is unplayable almost. So we wanted to make them have physical and mental consequences, and how they're invoked. The initial compel comes from the GM to the player to get the sanity, but once they have it, that aspect um, can cause all kinds of troubles for the character. And again, it depends on how the GM plays the game. All right, Zach is gone. So if that answers your question, let me know. Okay, so the question is, a sanity hit is a compel, not a consequence of failing a sanity check. Um, yeah, that's actually a good point. So hang on, let me bring up the insanity doc here. Okay. Okay, so what we have in the book is that facing impossible circumstances and learning secrets that are beyond human comprehension places tremendous stress on players. Even more mundane situations like mass graves or disfigured bodies can lead to loss of one's sanities. So to invite to it, inspire the sense of dread that comes with living in the world of Arkham, we have what we call the horror ladder or horror ratings, additional consequences, and different kinds of mental disorders that can come from it. So we use a ladder system that uses the fate dice. The horror ladder then uses the same adjectives to determine how horrific something is. So, for example, a dismembered corpse with a look of agony in its fight might be ghastly at a +6, whereas a murder scene where someone is just shot would be a much lower consequence level. So basically, yeah. So at that point, you would make a check to see if you overcome the horror that is this thing. But once you fail that, now you've got the consequences that go along with it. And I think that's what you're asking is. So yeah, you're gonna fail that, and then after that, you're gonna get compelled. Oh, you've got whatever. So. Yeah, okay, so William brings up a good point. So he says he keeps thinking of this in the sense of Call of Cthulhu. That's actually a very good point. So Call of Cthulhu, this is not trying to be Call of Cthulhu. Just to be clear, Call of Cthulhu is its own kind of game about investigating and that kind of thing. That's not what we're going for at all. This is not. There's horror to this, but I think Lovecraft is about exploration and about mystery and about peeling back the Band-Aid that is covering the nastiness that is the city. There's going to be so much things going on underneath. Now, we, in our game group, have players who enjoy Call of Cthulhu. So there may be some aspects where you would want to apply certain situations that are very Lovecraftian that Call of Cthulhu brings in, but realistically, this is going to be a little bit different kind of game. I'm deliberately not going too deep into the Call of Cthulhu books because I don't really want to go over that ground. I want to go back to the actual writings of Lovecraft. I mean, for me, Charles Dexter Ward is a perfect example. Here's a guy who's well-to-do, lives in the old part, is tearing down his grandfather's or father's house, and he discovers a book.
Hopefully you can hear me. Hello? Can you hear me or? Can you hear me or?
All right. So Charles Dexter Ward, yeah. He finds a book in the wall, and it kind of starts his exploration, his journey into the unknown, where he gains different kinds of abilities and unlocks different kinds of secret and monsters.
Oh, okay, you can hear me. Okay.
So I think that's kind of where we're going with it. We want it to be there are some crazy things going on, but at the same time, it's really about finding things and uncovering things and exploring worlds and you're in with this one faction and this other faction is out to get you and these different kind of troubles, and that's kind of where we're trying to build it from. Question is the settings in the 1920s. So we're calling the setting kind of generic. There isn't going to be specific things to the 20s or the 30s or any of that kind of stuff. We are saying that it's like a modern world where there's no cell phone reception. So that takes out, there's no smartphones, there's not going to be any like Wi-Fi computers A lot of the people that live in the town are really old school, where they still keep files. But at the same time, if you want to go to the library or go to the hospital, they are connected. They do have computers that are available that you could get on or use or whatnot. Because I mean, realistically, it didn't make sense to kind of try to reinvent the whole world to make it a setting. But I mean, obviously it's up to the GMs. If they want to say there's no computers, then all of a sudden you've got more of an older theme. If you want to do your artwork in a specific style, that's going to also adjust your theme. Now, so the question is, okay, I love Cthulhu Mythos, but as a woman, it's pretty limiting on characters. Okay, so we actually did a couple things for character creation. So the first thing we have for character creation that is is we have what we want to call the pre-gens. And what a pre-gen is it's going to allow a character, I'm trying to bring it up here, it's going to allow you to generate your high concept. And in doing that, something just trying to work on. And what I mean by that is if you wanted to have a character, and obviously the sex of the character really doesn't matter, but you should be able to quickly go through and create something. So if you've got, for example, your high concept could be you're a high society student, or maybe you're a priest, or you're a doctor, or something like that, and then you have this kind of a twist to your character where you've, say, uncovered a family secret, or things aren't as they seem, or you've got this kind of a mix to your high concept, and that way you can really take that and apply it however you want. But at the same time, if you want to roll up a character and come up with a categorization, we'll also take that and like if you pick a alienist, for example, which is a psychiatrist kind of person, we're going to give you some aspects that are going to go along with that. So you'll have aspects that are specific to that role, or you'll have an aspect that is a Cthulhu, Lovecraftian kind of theme thing as well. And so we're kind of trying to give you that freedom. So you may have like some crazy stunts or some specific things. So like, for example, if you're a criminal, maybe one of your stunts would be that you have underworld contacts. That's where they're not going to give you like any like limitations. I mean, realistically, it's a game. It's supposed to be fun. So I don't know why, if you limit it, I think that's really the game master's fault more than the game's fault.
Yeah, makes sense.
So the question is, so archetypes start you off in that direction. Yes. So we're gonna give you kind of a way to get started. I already gave you a cup. It's in your room. We're gonna give you some very specific examples, and they're gonna be kind of jobs that I think are come from the books. There's people that work at the library, at the historic society. There's people that go to school at the museum, at the Miskatonic University. There are people that are in the police. There are people that are at the newspaper. All of these, to me, are all good characters. You're a policeman. You're a private detective. That's it. It's about creating characters that are fun to play. I mean, we had initially when we first did it, we had things like factory workers and that kind of stuff. And let's be honest, what kind of skills are a factory worker going to bring to the table that's going to be fun? You're like Joe Blow who just falls into this. Yeah, maybe, but I don't know that that's going to make for a really fun game. Whereas if you're like like a police officer and you've got a badge and an aspect that you have access, you have special access because you're a policeman, well, that's going to be a little bit more, I think, entertaining and useful, and hopefully to make it a better game for everybody. Okay, so the question is, I think well, that's the whole point. Is that by filling in the section, it's an adjective, a job, and then a twist. So you're a bankrupt lawyer whose partner got abducted. that you could roll up that character on the random chart. I mean, obviously you could pick it too. I mean, the rolling chart is really just there to get it going fast. But I mean, that high concept right there, that gives you a lot of flavor. That's going to fit into the world. You know, you've got no money, you got no resources. You're a lawyer, so you understand the law, and you have some benefit from that. Your partner's missing. Well, all of a sudden now we've got something going on that's going to give your character some purpose in the world as well. So that's where we're going with it. But like I said, we've got different ways. So we've got the quick start rules, which is what I just described, and then we've also got the picking rules, where we have it broken down into the standard groupings, where you've got like the faithful, and faithful characters are going to depend on what aspects you pick and what kind of faithful they are. So they could be a priest. The priest is going to have specific kinds of my son is on his tiptoes getting water out of the fridge. But you could also be a faithful who's a cult member. That's going to have, that kind of like cultist twist on religion. That's going to give them something special into it, So, like I said, we're interested. So that's actually one of the things we're gonna go over in the morning games. Is we will have some pre-gen characters that we're going to start with, and we're going to play through them, and it's going to be a playtest in the sense where we're going to take those characters and in short scenes kind of work on them and talk about them and try to really make something special with them, so that they're not just our ideas, but we want everybody to kind of give some feedback. And I'm only one person. John Perry, who's doing a lot of the character creation, who's doing a great job. He also, we're just a couple of guys, so we want to hear everybody's ideas. We want to get some ideas because you never know what might come out of these. We might find some gold. So, that being said, time is up. I thank everybody for your questions. Like I said, I will post to the Kickstarter, and I will post to the Google Plus group details on the games. And like I said, they're going to be at 9 a.m. Pacific time for 1 hour. So that's it. They'll never go over an hour, and I will keep everybody posted. So thanks, everybody. Have a good week.